Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. In today's episode, we're going to be covering the further breakdown in Bitcoin that we saw over the 4th of July here, continuing to find its bottom, you guys. But in addition to that, we also got big production reports out from Bit Digital, CORZ Scientific, SATO Technologies, and of course IREN. So a lot of numbers to go through in today's presentation. Before we do though, please take a second, smash the like button, guys. Big help to myself and the channel. Anthony loves it. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below if you're currently holding any of these four miners, your thoughts on their June numbers, and your outlook for the remainder of 2024. Now with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, really the same story as yesterday, you guys. Bitcoin continuing to find its bottom here, struggling to see some sort of support level that's really going to give it a meaningful bounce here. So we're going to talk about that. In addition to that, Anthony, we got production results out from four of the big name companies that we cover. And really interesting to see, you kind of alluded to this yesterday, but a lot of these production reports, they're multiple pages now. They've broken out each business unit. It's really nice to see so much data becoming available outside of the self-mining. So we're going to get into that today, you guys. A lot to talk about. But first, Anthony, we'd be remiss if we don't talk about the price of Bitcoin and the difficulty adjustment.
Yeah. Bitcoin took another tumble earlier this morning. It's starting to recover a little bit, and according to early reports, there's been more selling. Is it the Mt. Gox? There's been more selling Bitcoin there, so maybe that's some impact there. But it is starting to recover. It got down into the 53s, and now it's probably close to 55.5 now. So it's recovered there. Again, we said yesterday, if you're in this for the long haul, Bitcoin price today is where you probably want to be buying it. If you understand about Bitcoin, and likelihood is people will buy at this level. The institutions will buy at this level because this is cheap compared to it was, a few months ago when it was like 25% higher at 73. So yeah, it's just again it's another day in Bitcoin world. The miners were hit hard early this morning in pre-market, but they seem to be recovering a little bit. So not as the losses or the falls in share price don't seem to be as steep as they were probably even about an hour ago. So, but we're in this volatile market, so things can happen minute by minute. And believe you me, it can be a bit of a roller coaster for the not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah, be greedy when others are fearful. There's blood in the streets. This is the time to be buying. Anthony, we talked about difficulty quite a bit this week as well. That went through today. What was the final percentage we saw there?
Yeah, I think it was 4.28% in terms of difficulty going down. So we were talking about 5% yesterday, but it does. You do find that as you get closer to the difficulty switch, even that the difficulty becomes quite volatile. So so we knew it was going to be around the 5% mark, and it has to be. Hash price dropped to 43 today. So again, another percent. $1 per petahash per day down on what it was yesterday. And this is big revenues, and we'll come on to why that's important when we come through some of these through some of the updates today.
Yeah, we certainly will. Now, a quick shout out, Anthony. We launched our audio podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, all the regular podcast platforms a couple of months ago now, about 2 months ago. We've just about had 3,000 audio downloads, which is phenomenal. I'm throwing up a chart here showing the top cities. Really a lot of diversity in terms of the cities, the regions, the countries that are watching our program. So let us know in the comment section below, you guys, where you're from. Throw up your flag or whatever country you represent there. Super curious to see the distribution. But some of the top cities around the world, Anthony, being represented in terms of listening to the podcast. So really exciting stuff. Now, moving along here, Soluna is actually the only company in the green for me today. Looks like Hive may have just eked out a green as well. So nice to see some of the smaller plays we've talked about on the channel getting some of that love. Now, in addition to that, Bit Digital, they just put out their report here today, Anthony. As I mentioned, great breakdown between the corporate highlights, the balance sheet, the proof of stake operations there. They came out with 61.7 Bitcoin in the month, so a slight decrease, 2.5% month over month. What were your thoughts on the Bit Digital report here?
Yeah, they put out consistent reports. We're not seeing any increase in hash rate last few months, so their operational hash rate's just over 2.5. I think they were operating at 2.8 about 3 months ago, so that's come down a little bit. Maybe there's a bit of curtailment there, but they've not put anything to suggest there's any issues. So maybe curtailing a bit of energy, as most of the miners do. So, they might quote what they've got, as hash rate, but they're all curtailing and they have to, they're good citizens in the districts that they operate in because, the domestic supply has to keep going. And when the domestic supply is high, the miners switch off and let the domestic supply take the energy. And then when it's underutilized, they'll switch back on and balance the grid. So that's what these miners do. So 2.57 exahash is their average for the month. What was interesting this month is they haven't said how many they sold, but you can do the calculations from what they had in the previous month. And actually, they sold over 500 Bitcoin, so 514 Bitcoin. But it looks like they've increased their Ethereum holding significantly. So you can start seeing now the play that Bit Digital are taking now. They've been stressing this third revenue stream in terms of the staking revenue. And in previous months, it was just under 100,000 a month. And this month, it's 171,000. So a big jump in staking revenue, a big jump in Ethereum held. So probably nearly another over 9,000 coins, I think they've added to their treasury. They've also got cash of about just under $61 million. So if you look at the treasury position as a whole, you're talking over 200 million. This company is debt free. So, the other day when we looked, I think it was 380 million was the market capitalization. That suggests an enterprise value of around about 180 million. Which is it's it's low in terms of comparison, and you're getting 2.5, nearly 3 exahash. You're also getting you're getting this massive AI HPC contract, which is delivering 4.1 million at the moment, and then when they receive these extra servers and GPUs. In July, so in this month, they're going to receive a whole host of, I think it's 256 servers and 2,048 GPUs. This will take their revenues from 50 million annualized to 92 million annualized. So you're going from 4 up to sort of 7.5 million. So when we sort of get the September or October update, you'll see that number that's currently in there. And it's been in their updates since the start of the year. So ever since they started these contracts, I think it was at just over 1 million in January, but February, March, April, May, all the way through to June with Sam's been showing the 4.1 million, which when you look at it from an annualized perspective, that's his $50 million contract. And, why not put the flag on that one? I'd be putting the flag on that one if I was a chief exec. And what you're seeing now is what you just alluded to. Other mining companies are not just putting Bitcoin mining in their updates. I think Bit Digital, probably the first miner to sort of recognize these companies are not just self-mining companies anymore now. They do far more than that. And I think the market needs to understand that you're not just valuing a Bitcoin self-mining company. The likes of Bitfarms, the likes of Marathon, the likes of Riot now, who don't have any hosts anymore. Or they do have maybe a very small amount, but they're looking to go host-free and just be self-mining. And CleanSpark, they just do self-mining. And the rest of the miners are doing other streams as well, just to keep the revenues coming through. And so we're now seeing a lot more transparency. I think Hut had a great update when they released theirs yesterday. Bit Digital have been doing this type of update for a long period, ever since we've been covering in our analysis. So this has been the norm. And what you find is companies tend to start copying in terms of
Yeah.
they want to keep up. We say in the UK, I don't know if they say in Canada as well, is keeping up with the Joneses. So if the neighbours are doing this, we want to make sure we're doing the same. Like, you know, so that's what's happening now in the market. I mean, bear in mind, 3 years ago, for all these companies, you get 3 or 4 lines. That was it. You know, you were trying to guess what the update should really say. It was literally, we've mined this, our hash rate's that, we sold that, our hodl's that. End of. Carry on next one.
There you
And
go.
now it's like you get War and Peace, you get 3 videos, 4 Spaces meetings in a month, and you've still got people crying out, we don't get enough. So it's like you can't win with some
Still
shareholders.
got people complaining. Sounds like my kids, Anthony. We do say keeping up with the Joneses here in Canada, and a strong report from Bit Digital.
Yeah.
I did an exercise last night, Anthony. You'd probably be better than me at this. I looked at the Core Scientific deal, and I basically broke it down on a value per megawatt, and then I was starting to analyze each company, just if you valued them only on their megawatts under management for HPC only, and looking at what we get. So that might be an interesting table to look at. And then we add in the $100 million per exahash average, start to see what we look at some combined businesses.
Yeah.
And funny enough, the modeling I was doing was after the Core Scientific deal, which is the next one we have up here, Anthony. So they, in addition to Bit Digital, put out a very extensive update here, talking obviously about the big 270 megawatt CoreWeave deal. That was the headline. However, they had a strong month of performance as well, 430 Bitcoin. And the other number that stood out here, Anthony, is the fleet efficiency upgrade. So they're down to 23.6 joules per terahash. So another company that's getting very, very close to that 20 efficiency level. What were your thoughts on CORZ this month?
Yeah, I mean, you know, CORZ are Mr. Consistency in terms of what they do, and they're that consistent that they can put their updates out on a daily basis. So every day you know what they've mined, and it's generally been around an average of about 12 to 14 for the month of June. Yeah, so 430 Bitcoin mined. The hash rate wasn't as high operationally as it was for May, so it's come down from 20.4 to 19.4. But what they said is they're moving some of their hosted miners from hosted facilities, which are going to be converted for HPC, and put them into self-mining facilities. So they've been doing some work around that, and maybe that's impacted there. But also bear in mind, you're looking at 1 exahash, which is about 5%. And actually, that's not a massive figure for curtailment either. So, you know, again, I'd say that, you know, we're talking about, this is the month of June. This is one of the first 4 months of the hottest months of the year. You've got June, July, August, September. More curtailment in these months as the sort of requirement for people to use air conditioning. And we were grateful when we went down to Denton and Corsicana that they had air conditioning in both those sites, because we were dying on the Corsicana site because it's so massive. We were so far away from where the aircon was. So you know, it was I found it a little bit easier at Denton because it's even though it's a big facility, it's just in terms of the size comparison, you just can't compare the two.
No.
And so you know, it's not a big drop in hash rate. The thing that stands out for me is that fleet efficiency coming down. So fleet efficiency comes down, it means that the price of energy to mine Bitcoin is coming down. And again, we'll talk about that with a couple of the last people we've got to speak with, because for some miners now, they're actually putting the cost to mine a Bitcoin on their updates. That's another piece that was started actually by the likes of IREN and TeraWulf, and now you've got SATO Technology also do that, and we'll get other miners again starting to probably include it. There's a thirst for information from retail and institutional investors, and I'm sure they'll just fall in line as it goes along.
Yeah, interesting point you brought up. That was actually my question at the Core Scientific Investor Day, Anthony, is as these companies are converting facilities or data centers from self-mining to HPC AI, there's going to have to be some downtime. You can't just teleport these machines to another location and plug them in. And I don't know if it sounded like Adam felt like they were pretty solid that they are pretty certain that they would be able to minimize downtime. So it'll be interesting to see if this is curtailment or just moving pieces of hardware around. But overall, like you say, completely consistent, completely expected from Core, and really nice to actually see the share price of a lot of these miners holding up relatively well compared to the decline we've seen in Bitcoin. And I think Core's CoreWeave deal really helps give some life to
That's
the industry.
that's obviously the big news story. We've covered it, probably over covered it because it is a we still say it's a game
Oh yeah,
changing deal, and it's put every miner now on alert now as to think actually we've got capacity with our power out and our facilities. Maybe we should be looking at something as well, and look at the update that TeraWulf put out there. What started out to be going to be a small part of in HPC in terms of a business is now looks like it's developing into something a bit more significant, and even the smaller miners are looking at upgrading what they've got as well. So that deal has opened the eyes of many, and there shouldn't be any sort of any sort of try to downplay that contract. That contract is there in black and white, and it's transparent. If they've laid out all the figures, they're not hiding anything.
no,
It'd be great to see their margins. I mean, the margins are phenomenal. That we'll talk a bit more when we come on to the IREN, because IREN have put something in their update. But that 80% margins once that capital's been paid back to the capital to help build the facilities, so you're not having to spend any money. It's not like Core Scientific have got loads of money in the bank. They come out of Chapter 11. They have got a cash position at the moment, and the last time they announced what it was close to 100 million. So they've been doing everything right up to now, and I think the interesting piece of work to do is to start looking at the valuation of these companies from a HPC perspective as well as a self-mining, and see where they are, because even as a mining company, their sort of valuation at the moment, they're quite cheap compared to the peers, and they've got that massive contract next to it, which sort of like blows everything out of proportion. Then, so yeah,
yeah.
definitely worth.
Yeah, I think it'd be an interesting exercise because I agree that the Wall Street just simply does not care or value Bitcoin mining. So for us retail folks who know the value of Bitcoin and see the future of Bitcoin, I think we're really getting an opportunity here. Now, you mentioned SATO Technologies putting in their all-in energy costs. I can't help but notice, Anthony, it's $47,623 US per Bitcoin just in electricity. That's not leaving a lot of wiggle room for these miners at the current Bitcoin price, eh?
No, it's not, and that's the all-in price. So you'll sometimes hear miners say what their price is per kilowatt hour, but there are other fees that miners pay on top of that. So one thing about SATO is that they're pretty much transparent. But if you go back, look at April 2024. 2 months ago, and the price to mine a Bitcoin then was 25,000. So it's that was half that month was pre-halving, and nearly half the month was pre-halving, and the rest of the month was post-halving. So
Yeah.
May 48,000, June 47,000. The issue that Sato highlighted earlier in the month of June was they had a bit of a problem at their facility, and they've only got the one facility. I think they had a bit of a fire there, and it caused damage to an element of it, not the whole site, but a proportion of the site. I think they were quoting at the time it was going to affect about 40 petahash. So here's a company that mine at around just over half an exahash. So probably affects about 8% of the company. But if you look at the operating hash rate for June of 0.44, and look at what it was in May and April at 0.53, that suggests that 40 petahash was actually slightly higher, maybe closer to 90. So it's had a bigger impact.
20% of the whole operation. And the thing I just wanted to call out quickly, sorry to interrupt, Anthony, When you say the all-in electricity cost, the additional costs you're talking about are transmission, distribution,
Transmission.
that type of thing. We're
Yeah,
not
they're
talking
big
about
costs.
all-in costs overall. No.
They are big costs. It's not; these are not small amounts. It
Yeah.
might sound small when you get it down to the lowest level, but actually, as a cost itself, we talk about. I think it was like TeraWulf's blended price yesterday was like 4.2, and the price to mine a Bitcoin was just over. I think it was over 30, just over 30,000. And so just think of what, the blended price is for SATO, and we'll come on to IREN. We'll look at that next. It sounds small when you talk about it, but actually when you look at the full cost to mine a Bitcoin in terms of energy, it can be quite staggering. And this is what will happen every quarter. This amount will increase. Now, one thing that miners have got to the ability to do is to improve the fleet, and we've just talked about Core Scientific getting down to 23, CleanSpark are at 22. There's a couple of other miners in the sort of 23, 24 bracket. So these big miners are fitting in now. These S21s, S21Ts, or sorry, S21s and T21s to get their efficiency down. And Riot are going to put in the M66 micro BT equivalent, so they'll get their efficiency down. But that's one way of reducing the energy cost. It's the other way is obviously getting cheaper energy. If you can source cheaper energy. And that's why you've got the likes of Bitfarms going to Paraguay to source energy down there. They're operating in 15 different sites, and at some of those sites it's really good energy pricing, so they're utilising that. But it's a big cost, and this cost doubles. I read somewhere this morning actually that suggested that the S19s now, and even potentially the S19 XPs. So this is only like a couple of machines lower than the S21 model, are starting to become unprofitable now, because of the hash price at the moment. As it
Unprofitable. Yeah. Wow.
unprofitable, so you'd have to start switching off all your S19s, and then the S19 XPs, which 140 terahash, they're not making money out of mining at the moment, unless you've got literally really really low pricing, and we've
And the
talked about those that
S19,
have got low pricing.
that's like the workhorse of regular miners, right?
It
I
is,
understand
yeah,
some of the top tier public miners may have access to capital to get the T21, S21, but the majority of the world that's mining, I think, are on that S19 XP or
absolutely.
S19. Yeah.
So this is going to be interesting now. If this price stays where it is, then you you've got to look at that difficulty coming down for a lot further, because there'll be a lot more machines coming off. It's really, these big public companies who can afford to sort of like, buy sort of significant quantities of the most efficient miners, that will be able to mine. And that's where the benefit comes in, that they'll get the benefit. It's a long game for them. It's like, at the moment, you're still getting people probably mining unprofitable at the moment in the hope that Bitcoin price goes up and they can recover the losses that way. But to say that all the S19s, and literally, you're getting close using the S19 XPs, which I thought were, they're quite efficient miner. They were starting to become unprofitable at certain energy costs, and not high energy costs.
Geez. Well, it's going to be an interesting time. And then you start to think of the M&A implications of that, right? As people are turning off, they're folding up shop. They've obviously got older equipment, but they may have access to the infrastructure, the power. So a lot of opportunities here. Now, the fourth company, IREN, I'm pretty sure I know what number you're talking about here, Anthony, because I see a couple 99 percentages on the sheet. Hardware profit margin is the line that really caught my eye here. But again, you guys, when you look at the update, you see the key highlights. They break out Bitcoin mining, AI cloud service, data center, and then the corporate. So this is really the direction we want to get our website as well, where we're giving a holistic view of each one of these companies. Of course, we're all here for Bitcoin. Of course, we all love Bitcoin mining. But there's so much more to the story now than just harvesting Bitcoin each and every day. So, Anthony, I'll let you walk through IREN. Was that the line you're talking about there? The hardware?
Yeah, So the IREN have a slightly different model to the likes of what Core Scientific can go down with. So IREN is effectively they've built their facilities themselves. They've bought the GPUs themselves, and they're going to get revenues by employing these GPUs on the network and selling the services. They have got one client at the moment, poolside. It's on an extension at the moment, so there's unsure how many more months they've got, whether they're going to extend again. But they'll have a demand response mechanism for customers to come in and use the GPU power and pay for a usage fee. And it is quite profitable. Bear in mind, you don't. Two things to note. The energy required for HPC AI services is nowhere near what the Bitcoin mining is. It's like a tenth of the requirement. So, them percentages there. What IREN are doing there is they're showing the revenue they received in the month for June, which was just over a million, 1,078,000. So if you put that in terms of annualized revenue, that's about 13 million. We've already explained about Bit Digital's contract. That's at 50 million at the moment, going up to 92. So Bit Digital in terms of HPC are leading IREN significantly. But that's growing for IREN, and they'll need to see that grow. I think they're expanding that service. They've put more investment into it. But they've had to pay out all the for the facilities and for the GPUs. Now that's not in that figure. So when you start looking at these GPUs, and I think they were costing 30,000-40,000 each, and they've got a shed load of them. We're into the sort of tens of millions. We start depreciating that down. They turn around and said the first 2 year of revenue. So in this instance here, if they're going to get a million, 1.1 million a month, so that's 26 million over the first 2 years. And I think they're suggesting that the revenues will grow. So whatever the revenues get in the first 2 years probably covers what they've paid in terms of capital payments. And then in year 3, you're then sort of benefiting from these type of margins in terms of, you've got a low energy requirement there. So the energy is only $20,000 a month and you're bringing in 1.1 million. It's great, but it's the capital that you've got to pay out first. And so Core Scientific will get their 405 million in terms of capital requirement funded to them by CoreWeave. And then that deduction will come out the first, literally the first 2 years or 2.5 years of that contract. And they're still making a great return in the first 2 years. It's not like all of it's going, only 50% of the revenues is going. They're still making, I think it's like 30% margins in the first 2 years. And then in, years towards the end of, year 3 and onwards for the remainder of that contract, you're into 80% margins. So they haven't got this requirement, and they haven't got machines to buy that go, they become out of date. That's not their issue. They haven't got energy pricing to worry about, which IREN will have as well, and Bit Digital will have, and Hive, and the other 3 or 4 big HPC potential players in the market. So that's what really sort of how you look at these different contracts. That one, that Core Scientific is pretty good, and providing HPC stays around for 12 years, and we're very early in that. People said the internet won't last long. We're still here now, about 40 years later. So
there you go. My only question mark here, and it kind of, well, it is the asset light versus vertically integrated model here, but now on the AI HPC side. My real $1 million question, Anthony, is just what is the lifespan of these NVIDIA H100s, right? Because if they turn around, they already have the 200 out, and they start saying, hey, you know what, the H100 just isn't sufficient anymore. IREN, they just published, they have 816 of these things now, and you're right, there's significant investment there. Now, on the flip side, if the H100 ends up being a phenomenal unit and it lasts 4 or 5 years, then that whole dynamic changes. The other thing I wanted to just quickly call out with IREN, we got a couple of great images, one on their growth strategy up to the 40 exahash, one on their Childress location here. You can see those buildings are popping up just like plants in a field or something, Anthony, coming right along. And again, you guys, 2024 growth, fully funded, 425 million of cash and no debt for IREN. So all that packaged up, plus the opportunity we talked about yesterday with the Hope of Port Authority and that prime piece of real estate. with their Lake Mariner facility. There's a lot to like with this story, but you guys, there you have it. A lot of activity for a Friday morning here, coming off a short trading week with July 4th. We'll see what happens to Bitcoin over the weekend if this Mt. Gox selling can subside and maybe we start to see some inflows based on these reduced prices. Anthony, I'll kick it back to you for closing thoughts, but appreciate the time and obviously a lot of the data today.
Yeah, it's going to be challenging next period now for the miners with this price at the moment. I think people were expecting the Bitcoin price probably now. We've gone past 70 days now since the halving. So in previous cycles, that's sort of 70 to 90 days where the Bitcoin price has moved, and we've seen it actually drop 25% since its high in March. So, but we know it can move really quickly, and when it decides to move upwards, it can change in literally days. So, it doesn't have to take a long time to do it. But I think there's obviously people expectations aren't being met at the moment, and this year was a different year from all the other previous cycles because we've got the ETF benefits of these institutions buying Bitcoin faster than it can be produced. And yes, it's had an impact on the price in the early parts of the year because it started at 42,000, it grew to 73,000 back on March the 13th, and now it's retraced back to sort of 55,000 today. So we were hoping, we were only saying a couple of days ago that 60,000, 65,000 had been holding for about 3 months, and now we've dropped below it, but it looks like it's recovering a little bit today from its low. It was low at 53,000. As I said before, a lot of the mining companies were was close to 10% down, this morning in pre-market, and some have recovered. A couple are in the green now. You've mentioned Soluna in the green. So yeah, we've only got 3 or 4 more minor updates to come out. So we've still got Soluna, we've still got Hive, we've got Gryphon. I think DMG are the 4 that we're still waiting for. And when those come out, we'll do the next update.
Phenomenal. Yeah, Bit Digital looks like it's just eked out a green here as well. Bitcoin's back over 56,000. So we must have instilled some confidence in the market during this discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
I think so. Okay. Well, Anthony, great talking with you. We'll see you next week. We've got an action-packed week starting off with an interview with Hive on Monday, you guys. Then we've got our weekly Wednesday live podcast, and we're only a couple of weeks out, but now from Nashville Bitcoin conference. So a lot to go through this month, a lot to be excited about, and all eyes on the Bitcoin price. Anthony, thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.